Hidden Omega lived in woods 15 years, until a night cry reached the Alpha King. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, back to our main character. Emily Cooper had lived her life far away from the bustling world of others. Hidden deep in the woods, she had been left to fend for herself. For 15 long years, she had survived on her own, secluded from society, hidden away as an Omega, considered weak and unworthy by those who should have cared for her. Her once strong heart, full of dreams, had been broken too many times to count. She had been abandoned as a child, cast aside by her family, and left to roam the wilderness. With each passing day, she learned more about herself, her ability to heal, her ability to feel what others couldn't. But even with all these gifts, Emily was still alone. The trees were her only companions, the birds and animals her family. She had learned to accept her solitude, even though it cut her deep. No one knew she was alive, let alone cared. Yet, there was something special about Emily, something that not even she fully understood. She had a connection to the earth, a bond to the wild that no one else seemed to possess. Her heart beat in time with the rhythm of the forest, her mind calm, yet alert to everything around her. She had lived in this quiet world for so long that the thought of returning to the pack, to the people who had rejected her, never crossed her mind. But everything was about to change. One night, as Emily sat by the fire, her senses sharpened, something caught her attention. A distant cry, a sound filled with pain and desperation. It echoed through the trees, reaching her ears in a way no other sound ever had. The cry of someone in need, someone who might be lost or hurt, calling out to her. For a moment, Emily froze, unsure of what to do. She hadn't heard a cry like that in years, and she had certainly never felt such an urgent pull. The sound was familiar in a way that made her heart race. It wasn't just the cry itself, it was the way it vibrated in her soul. She felt a deep, undeniable connection to it. Without thinking, Emily rose to her feet. Her heart raced, her instincts taking over. She grabbed her cloak, hurriedly tying it around her shoulders, and set off into the night. The forest felt different tonight, the trees whispering, the air heavy with anticipation. She followed the sound, moving swiftly through the underbrush, guided only by the cries that seemed to grow louder with each step. Emily wasn't sure what she would find, but she couldn't turn back now. The cry led her deeper into the woods, to a clearing she had never seen before. There, in the center, was a massive wolf, its fur dark as night, bleeding and weak, its eyes barely open. Emily gasped, her heart skipping a beat. This was no ordinary wolf. This was something far more powerful. She knelt beside it, her hands shaking, and without thinking, she began to heal. Her touch was gentle, but there was an undeniable energy flowing through her, healing the wolf's wounds as if by magic. The wolf's eyes opened, and for the first time in years, Emily felt a presence. It was watching her. She didn't know it yet, but the wolf wasn't just any animal. It was the Alpha King, disguised and hiding from his own destiny. And Emily was the one who had answered his call. The night was still, the only sound the rustle of the leaves in the gentle breeze, but Emily's heart was beating faster than ever. As she knelt beside the massive wolf, her fingers hovering over the fur, she felt an energy that was unlike anything she had ever experienced. It was as if the very earth around her was reacting to her presence, urging her forward, urging her to heal. She could feel the wolf's heartbeat slowing, but something was still off. It was not just any wolf. Emily had no idea how she knew this, but deep down, she felt a strange pull, an undeniable bond. As her hands made contact with the wolf's fur, something strange happened. The wolf's eyes fluttered open, revealing the most intense shade of amber she had ever seen. For a moment, the world seemed to stop. The forest seemed to hold its breath, and Emily's own heartbeat faltered as she locked eyes with the beast. The wolf's gaze held power, a deep, primal force that made her feel small, yet strangely safe at the same time. It wasn't until the wolf let out a soft growl, low and rumbling, that Emily realized something had shifted. The growl wasn't one of aggression, but of gratitude. Emily leaned closer, her hand now resting on the wolf's chest as she continued to heal. She could feel the warmth spreading through her fingertips, a warmth that seemed to go deeper than just the physical. It was as though she were healing not just the wolf's body, but something within him, something far older, something far more powerful. The wolf's breathing steadied, and Emily dared to breathe a sigh of relief. But as she continued to work, her mind kept drifting back to the strange pull she felt when their eyes met. She didn't know what it was, but there was something undeniably powerful about this moment. As she finished healing the last of the wounds, the wolf's body finally relaxed. Emily pulled her hands away, her heart still racing from the connection she had just felt. And then, something strange happened. The wolf's body began to shimmer, the fur shifting and changing, his form slowly changing into something more human. The transformation was slow at first, but it was unmistakable. The wolf was not just a wolf. He was something else entirely. Emily stepped back, her breath catching in her throat as she watched the man before her emerge from the wolf's form. He was tall, broad-shouldered, with sharp features that seemed almost too perfect to be real. His hair was dark and wild, his eyes still glowing with that same amber intensity. Emily's heart skipped a beat as the realization hit her. The man before her was no ordinary person. He was the Alpha King, a figure of legend, someone whose name was whispered in every pack. She had healed the Alpha King. As he stood before her, his eyes locked onto hers, and for the first time in her life, Emily felt as though she truly mattered. But the Alpha King did not speak. He merely regarded her with that intense gaze, as if weighing her very soul. Emily felt a shiver run down her spine as she realized that everything in her life had just changed in the blink of an eye. She had no idea how or why, but she knew one thing for certain. Her life would never be the same again. The Alpha King, now standing before her in human form, took a step closer, his presence overwhelming, yet strangely comforting. He extended a hand toward her, his fingers brushing hers, and in that moment, Emily felt the bond between them solidify, something ancient and powerful passing between them. His voice was low, rough, as he finally spoke. "You have saved me," he said, his words carrying a weight she could not begin to comprehend. "And for that, you will never be alone again." The Alpha King's words lingered in the air, heavy with meaning. Emily stood frozen for a moment, her mind struggling to catch up with the reality unfolding before her. The man who had once been a wolf, whose presence had felt as ancient as the earth itself, now stood before her, no longer just a powerful leader, but someone who owed his survival to her. A quiet shiver ran down her spine as the enormity of the situation began to sink in. She had healed him. She had touched something within him that no one else had been able to reach. The Alpha King took another step closer, his amber eyes never leaving hers. His presence was magnetic, drawing her in, and she could feel a strange warmth growing in her chest. She had always been alone, had never known what it was like to truly connect with another person. But now, standing before this man, she felt something stir within her, something she couldn't quite name, yet it was undeniable. He was still silent, but his gaze spoke volumes, as if he was searching for something deep within her. Emily's heart raced, and for a moment, she considered running. It was easier to be alone, safer. But then she remembered the pull she had felt when they first made eye contact, the unspoken connection, the bond that had formed in that brief, fleeting moment. Her instincts told her she could trust him, that she was meant to be here, with him. "You saved me," he finally spoke, his voice low and steady. "But I don't think you understand yet, Emily. You saved more than just my body. You saved a part of me I thought was lost forever." The sincerity in his voice sent a ripple through her, and for the first time, Emily allowed herself to hope. The Alpha King's words had an almost haunting quality, and she realized that this was no ordinary man before her. He was not just a king or a leader. He was someone broken, someone who had been fighting his own demons. She had seen it in his eyes when he had been a wolf, and now she could see it in his human form too. Despite the strength and power that radiated from him, there was a vulnerability hidden beneath the surface, a vulnerability he had likely never shown anyone. "What happens now?" Emily asked, her voice barely above a whisper. The Alpha King regarded her for a long moment, his gaze intense. He opened his mouth to speak, but then paused, as though considering how to explain something too complex for words. "Now, we begin," he said finally, his voice firm yet soft. "Now, we find out what fate has in store for us. I can't promise that everything will be easy, but I can promise that you will not be alone. You are mine now, Emily, in a way I can't explain, but I feel it. I know it." Emily's heart skipped a beat at his words. It wasn't just the claim he had made. It was the certainty in his voice. The raw truth that seemed to resonate deep within her, as if his words were unlocking something inside her that had been dormant for years. She had never been anyone's mate, never known what it meant to truly belong to someone. But now, standing before the Alpha King, the word felt real. She felt real. She felt seen, something she had never experienced before. Slowly, the Alpha King extended his hand toward her, his large, strong fingers offering a connection she never thought she would have. Emily hesitated for only a moment before placing her hand in his. The moment their skin touched, an electric jolt ran through her, sending a shockwave of warmth through her body. It was a strange sensation, like the world had shifted, and she had been placed right where she was. Meant to be. She didn't understand it, but she didn't need to. In that moment, nothing else mattered. "Come with me," the Alpha King said softly, his voice carrying the weight of centuries of power. "There is much we need to discuss, and there is much I need to show you." With his hand still gently holding hers, Emily felt a wave of trust wash over her, stronger than anything she had ever known. Whatever lay ahead, she knew one thing for certain. Her life had just changed forever. And this time, she wasn't running away. She was ready to face whatever destiny had in store for her, beside the Alpha King. The Alpha King's hand was still warm in hers as he led Emily through the dense forest. The moonlight filtered through the leaves, casting an ethereal glow over the path ahead. The air was crisp, but Emily felt a warmth spreading from her hand to the rest of her body, as if the very touch of the Alpha King was enough to erase the cold that had plagued her for years. She had never been this close to anyone, never shared such a connection, and yet, with him, it felt natural, as though they had known each other for a lifetime. The Alpha King's presence was both commanding and comforting. Every step he took seemed to resonate with power, yet there was a softness to him now, something that was hidden beneath the layers of his leadership and strength. As they walked, Emily found herself drawn to him, to the mystery that surrounded him, to the vulnerability she had sensed earlier, beneath his regal facade. They walked in silence for a while, and Emily couldn't help but wonder where he was taking her. The tension in the air was palpable, but it wasn't a bad kind of tension. It was the kind that made her feel alive, that made her heart race with anticipation. Finally, they reached a clearing. In the center of the clearing stood an ancient stone structure, its surface covered in moss and ivy, but it was unmistakably regal. A place of power. The Alpha King stopped in front of it, turning to face her. "This is where we begin," he said, his voice low and steady. Emily's heart fluttered at his words, her nerves tingling as if something significant was about to unfold. "Where we begin?" she asked softly, her voice betraying her uncertainty. The Alpha King nodded, a slight smile tugging at the corner of his lips. "Yes, Emily. This is where you will learn everything about who you are, about what you're capable of, and what you mean to me." Emily's breath caught in her throat. She had never imagined that she could mean something to someone like him. The Alpha King was the ruler of the Northern Territories, a man who commanded armies, who ruled over the wolves with an iron fist. And here she was, standing before him, in the heart of the forest, with her hand still in his. He continued, his gaze never leaving hers. "You're not just an Omega," he said. "You're something more. You have abilities, powers that even you may not understand yet. Powers that I believe are meant to be awakened." Emily felt a shiver run down her spine. Powers? She had always known that she was different, but never had she imagined that she had any special abilities. "What do you mean?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper. "You have the gift of healing, Emily," the Alpha King said, his tone filled with conviction. "You healed me, but there is more to it. The forest, the land, the very earth around you responds to your touch. You have a connection to something ancient, something that goes beyond what you understand." Emily's mind raced as the words sank in. She had always felt a strange pull to the forest, as if it was calling to her, guiding her. But to think that she had a gift, that her healing powers were part of something greater, was almost too much to comprehend. The Alpha King stepped closer, his presence overwhelming, and gently lifted her chin with his finger. "You are my mate, Emily," he said, his voice soft but filled with undeniable certainty. "And together, we will unlock your true potential." Emily's heart skipped a beat at his words. She had never expected to hear something like that, never imagined that she would be claimed by someone as powerful as him. But now, standing here in the clearing with him, she could feel the weight of his words, the depth of the bond between them. A bond that had only just begun to form. She looked up into his amber eyes, seeing the promise of something deeper, something lasting. And for the first time in her life, Emily felt like she belonged, like she had found her place in the world, with him by her side. The Alpha King's words echoed in Emily's mind as they stood together in the ancient clearing. He had claimed her as his mate, but she still didn't fully understand what that meant. There were so many questions swirling in her head, so many emotions she wasn't sure how to process. But there was one thing she knew for certain. Her life had changed in ways she couldn't yet comprehend. She had been a solitary figure, hiding in the forest, thinking she would never belong anywhere. Now, standing beside the Alpha King, she felt a sense of belonging that she had never experienced before. His presence was overwhelming, yet somehow comforting. She was no longer alone. "I know this is a lot to take in," the Alpha King said softly, his voice filled with understanding. "But trust me, Emily, you have a power within you that is far greater than you realize. The forest, the land itself, has chosen you. And I, as your mate, will help you unlock that power." Emily looked up at him, her heart racing as she took in his words. He was right. She had always felt a connection to the forest, to the earth, but she had never understood it. Now, she knew that it was more than just a feeling. It was part of who she was. She had always been an Omega, the weakest of their kind, but now she was something more. She was the Alpha King's mate, and that came with responsibilities she hadn't yet grasped. "I don't know if I'm ready for this," she said quietly, her voice trembling with uncertainty. "I've spent so long hiding from the world, from my own people. Now, everything has changed." The Alpha King gently cupped her face in his hands, his touch sending a warmth through her. "You don't have to be ready, Emily. Not yet. But you will be. Together, we will face whatever comes our way. I won't let anything harm you." His words were a promise, one that rang with truth and strength. Emily felt the weight of them settle deep within her heart, and for the first time in years, she allowed herself to believe that maybe, just maybe, she wasn't as weak as she had always thought. The Alpha King's gaze softened as he took a step back. "The first step, Emily, is to embrace who you are. You are not just an Omega. You are more. You are my mate, and together, we will change the course of our world." Emily's breath caught in her throat. The enormity of what he was saying hit her like a wave, and for a moment, she was speechless. But then something stirred within her, a feeling of strength she had never known. She wasn't just the woman who had healed a wolf. She was the woman who had saved the Alpha King. And maybe, just maybe, she was the one who could change everything. "I'm ready," she said, her voice steady now. "I'll learn to embrace who I am." The Alpha King smiled, the intensity in his eyes never fading. "Good," he said, "because together, we are unstoppable." And as they stood there in the moonlit clearing, Emily knew that no matter what challenges lay ahead, she was no longer alone. With the Alpha King by her side, she was ready to face whatever came next. The days that followed were unlike anything Emily had ever experienced. The Alpha King, Alexander, took her under his wing, guiding her through the forest, showing her the depths of the power she had inside. Emily had always known she was different, but now she understood that her connection to the forest, to the earth itself, was not just a bond. It was a gift, a responsibility. Alexander explained that she was more than just his mate. She was the key to a future they both needed to fight for. She was to help him heal not only his kingdom, but himself. She spent her days training, learning how to harness the strange energy that flowed through her veins. It wasn't easy. Every time she reached for her power, it felt like she was reaching for something out of her grasp. But with Alexander by her side, guiding her, encouraging her, Emily began to see the potential within her. Each lesson was an awakening, Each moment spent with him felt like another step closer to understanding the depths of the connection they shared. There were days when she faltered, when doubts crept into her mind. How could someone like her, an Omega with no past, be the one to change the world? But Alexander was always there, offering her his quiet support. He never doubted her, and somehow, that made all the difference. He took her to places deep within the forest, places she had never seen before. There, ancient trees stood tall, their roots tangled deep within the earth, their presence overwhelming. "This is where the power of our people flows," Alexander explained one evening, his voice soft as they stood in the shadow of the great trees. "It's where our ancestors gathered, where they connected with the land. You, Emily, are a part of that legacy." Emily listened carefully, her heart pounding. "But I don't understand. How can I be part of something so powerful?" she asked, looking up at him. Alexander's eyes softened, his hand resting on her shoulder. "Because you have the gift. You are the bridge between our world and the power that lies beneath it. You are meant to heal, not just bodies, but hearts and souls. And through you, the power of the forest will be restored." His words settled deep within her. She had never thought of herself as anything special, but now, standing here with him, she began to see what he meant. She was more than just a healer. She was a force of nature. As the days turned into weeks, Emily grew stronger. She learned how to channel the energy within her, how to connect with the forest in ways that felt as natural as breathing. But it wasn't just the physical strength that changed. She could feel herself becoming more confident, more sure of who she was. And through it all, Alexander was there, watching her grow, offering encouragement when she needed it and space when she didn't. One evening, as they sat around a fire, Emily turned to him. "I'm starting to understand," she said quietly. "I'm starting to understand what it means to be with you, to be part of something much bigger than myself." Alexander's gaze softened, and he nodded. "And I am starting to understand what it means to not carry the weight of the world alone." Emily smiled, the warmth of the fire reflecting in her eyes. They had come a long way, both of them, from the people they had been when they first met. They had started as strangers, but now they were something more, a team, partners, in a fight that neither could face alone. As the fire crackled, Emily felt a sense of peace she had never known before. She wasn't alone anymore. And with Alexander by her side, she knew that they could face whatever challenges lay ahead, together. As the days turned to weeks, Emily and Alexander grew closer, their bond strengthening with each passing moment. Emily had learned much about herself during this time, discovering more of her power and her place in the world. She was no longer the frightened Omega who had been cast aside. She was someone important, someone who had a purpose. And that purpose was to stand beside Alexander, to help him heal not just his kingdom, but the very world they lived in. The forest had become her sanctuary, a place where she felt safe and at peace. But it was also where the challenges began to reveal themselves. Emily had discovered that her powers weren't just about healing. There were deeper, more complex layers to her abilities. She could feel the energy of the forest, the pulse of life that ran through the trees, the earth, the air. And she could tap into that energy, using it to mend wounds, calm fears, and bring peace to those in pain. But there were still moments of doubt. Emily had always been taught that Omegas were weak, that they were meant to serve and nothing more. And even though Alexander had shown her that she was more than that, the old insecurities still crept in. "What if I'm not enough?" she had asked him one night as they sat by the fire. "What if I can't live up to the potential you see in me?" Alexander had turned to her, his amber eyes soft but full of conviction. "You are more than enough, Emily. You've already done more than I ever could have imagined. You are the one who saved me, who healed me when no one else could. And you will continue to heal, not just me, but the world around us." Emily had looked at him, searching his face for any sign of doubt, but there was none. There was nothing but pure belief in her. His words had a calming effect on her, and for the first time in weeks, she allowed herself to relax. The weight of her doubts seemed to lift, just a little. "I want to believe you," she had whispered. "I really do." "Then believe this," Alexander had said, his voice soft and sincere. "Together, we will do great things. You're not just my mate, Emily. You're my partner, and we're in this together." Those words had stayed with her, echoing in her mind long after the fire had burned out. She wasn't alone anymore, and she would never be again. As their journey continued, Emily discovered more about her abilities, learning to control the energy that flowed through her and finding new ways to help those around her. Alexander had been right about one thing. She was powerful. She was more than just an Omega. She was a force to be reckoned with. And with Alexander by her side, she felt ready to face whatever the future held. There were still battles to fight, challenges to overcome, but Emily had no fear now. She had found her place in the world. And together, she and Alexander would change the course of history. The days blurred together as Emily and Alexander continued their journey, their bond growing stronger with each passing moment. Together, they explored the vast lands that lay before them, learning more about the ancient powers that flowed through Emily and the depths of Alexander's own strength. It was a time of discovery for both of them, a time when they began to understand not only the world around them, but the depths of their connection. Emily had come so far since the first day they met. She was no longer the unsure Omega she had once been. She was strong now, her abilities blossoming in ways that surprised even her. She had learned to harness the energy of the earth, to feel the pulse of the land beneath her feet, and to heal with a power she had never known she possessed. But despite her growth, she knew that there were still many challenges ahead. The world was vast and filled with dangers, and the Alpha King's reign, though powerful, was not without its enemies. As they moved deeper into the territories, Emily could sense the tension in the air. She wasn't just sensing the power around her. She was sensing the unease, the hidden threats that lurked in the shadows. It was clear that not everyone in the kingdom supported the Alpha King's rule. There were whispers of rebellion, rumors of factions that sought to undermine the throne. Emily couldn't ignore the feeling that something was coming, something dark and powerful. But she didn't have to face it alone. Alexander was with her, and he was more than just her mate. He was her partner, her protector, and together, they would stand strong against whatever came their way. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon and the sky turned to shades of purple and gold, they sat by the fire, the warmth of the flames casting flickering shadows on their faces. Emily gazed into the fire, her thoughts heavy. "Alexander," she began, her voice soft but filled with determination. "I can feel it. The darkness, the tension. I don't know what's coming, but I know it's going to test us. It's going to test everything we've built." Alexander didn't say anything at first. He just looked at her, his amber eyes steady and filled with understanding. "I know," he replied quietly. "I feel it too. The winds are shifting, Emily, and we must be ready for whatever comes. But no matter what happens, we face it together." Emily nodded, the weight of his words sinking deep into her heart. Together, that was the key. They had been through so much already, and yet, it felt like their journey was just beginning. There were forces at work that they couldn't fully understand yet, but Emily knew one thing for sure. With Alexander by her side, she could face anything. As the fire crackled and the night grew darker, Emily leaned against Alexander, finding comfort in his presence. The warmth of his body beside hers made the world feel safe, even though the dangers ahead were unknown. She had never imagined that she would find this kind of peace, not in a world that had once cast her aside. But here, with him, she felt stronger than she ever had. She was more than just the broken Omega of her past. She was a healer, a warrior, and the maid of the Alpha King. Together, they would change the world. The night stretched on, and they sat together in silence, their hearts in tune with the quiet rhythm of the forest around them. Emily knew that there were still battles to fight, still obstacles to overcome. But with Alexander, she was ready to face whatever came. Together they were unstoppable. The days grew colder as the first signs of winter approached, the crisp air a constant reminder that the world around them was changing. Emily and Alexander continued their journey through the vast and ancient lands, now more united than ever. Emily had learned so much about herself, her power, and her bond with Alexander. She was no longer the fragile Omega that had once hidden in the woods. She was strong, and the power that had once felt so foreign was now a part of her, flowing through her with every step. Alexander, ever the patient teacher, had helped her unlock the potential that lay dormant within her. He had shown her the power of the earth beneath their feet, how to channel the energy of the forest, and how to protect not just herself, but others. She had become more than just a healer. She had become a force, a protector, someone who could face any challenge without fear. But even as she grew stronger, there was still much to learn. She and Alexander had begun to speak of the future, of what their kingdom could be, of how they could change the world together. They had faced their pasts, and now they were ready to face whatever came next. There were still whispers of unrest, rumors of those who sought to challenge Alexander's rule. But Emily didn't fear them. She had seen firsthand how strong Alexander was, and with her by his side, they would stand against anything. One evening, as they sat by the fire, the crackling warmth of the flames dancing in their eyes, Alexander turned to Emily, his expression serious. "We've come a long way," he said, his voice steady. "But there's still much ahead of us. We have to be ready, Emily. The kingdom will need us both." Emily nodded, her heart swelling with pride at his words. She had always known that Alexander was more than just a king. He was a leader, a protector, and someone who cared deeply for the people he ruled. But now, she was no longer just a bystander. She was his partner, his equal, and together, they would bring about a new era, one where no one would be left behind. "I'm ready," Emily said, her voice firm. "I've learned so much already, and I know that with you by my side, we can face whatever comes." Alexander smiled, the warmth in his amber eyes never fading. "You're more than ready, Emily. You've already proven yourself. But we have to keep moving forward. The world is waiting for us." Emily felt the weight of his words settle within her. She knew there would be challenges ahead, but she also knew that she was no longer the same person she had once been. She was stronger, wiser, and more confident. And with Alexander at her side, she knew that they could face whatever the future held. The fire crackled as they sat in silence, their thoughts in tune with the quiet rhythm of the night. Emily's heart was filled with a sense of peace, knowing that she was no longer alone. She had found her place, her purpose, and the man who would stand by her through it all. The future was uncertain, but one thing was clear. Together, they would change the world.